Hello, welcome to Pride of South London Fan TV. Ali here, bringing you my preview of Crystal Palace versus Manchester United. I've got Andy Leathley with me today, a Man United fan. Hello, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm great, mate. How are you?
Yeah, fantastic. Well, could be better. I'm just going to talk very, very briefly about the Crystal Palace game at Villa Park. The briefer, the better, I think. All I will say on that matter is, who knew if you play uninspiring lineups, you get uninspiring results? Everyone was hoping that you could see Tyrick Mitchell given his debut. Seemed like the game for it. No debut. And then again, everybody hoping that maybe we play a more creative midfield. 3 defensive midfielders again in the lineup against a team who are 19th in the league. And the thing is, if you could get results, you get away with it. But unfortunately for Roy, again, and unfortunately for us, it was a very, very poor performance. And I think it might be one game too far for Crystal Palace fans. Here is a result of a poll I did on social media, Andy, after the Aston Villa game. 81.3% of Palace fans who voted on that poll voted that
I saw that.
Roy to go. What's the mania from an outsider point of view? What have you made of Palace since restart?
I haven't paid too much attention, to be honest, mate. But I looked at your last sort of 13 games.
Too far down the table.
Sorry?
Too far down the table.
Yeah. But I did some research into this, and it sort of mirrors how Ollie kind of started and then middled and then is doing at the moment, where I think you lost 3 and then won 4, and now you've lost 5. It's a bit bizarre. It's very patchy. You need just a bit more consistent good players across the whole squad, which I just don't think you have at the moment, and the manager's making bad decisions too. Yeah,
I think you've nailed that, and we'll come on to the squad depth in a moment when we do our team selections, because I looking at picking this team and trying to come up with something different was very, very difficult because there's a distinct lack of options.
Right.
Let's get on to let's move on from Palace because it's just not nice to talk about. But let's move on to United, because since the restart, it does feel like a massive comeback. I mean, the only thing I could compare it to is when Take That split in the 90s, and then they came back and had this massive comeback. Remember Gary Barlow disappeared and then he reappeared overweight. And I'm not just comparing Man United to Take That because your left back Luke Shaw looks slightly like a chubby Gary Barlow, but you are definitely back with a bang since the restart. Do Man United fans sort of have a renewed faith in Ollie, or was it ever lost in the first place?
I was skeptical when he was appointed, to be honest. Obviously I love him as a player and as a Man United legend. And by the way, as a little caveat, I did actually see Take That on that reunion tour, and they were very, very good. But they faded away now, so hopefully that doesn't happen to us.
Do you think Luke Shaw looks a bit like a young chubby Gary
Barlow? Well, perhaps, maybe. I served him once in a restaurant that I was working in, and he was injured at the time. Right. And he had a big meal, man. I mean, he'd had the big start, a big main, and then I was just saying to myself in my head, please don't get like a big dessert, Luke. And then he got this massive dessert as well.
What did he get? What did he choose for dessert?
He had sticky toffee pudding with ice cream.
These are the exclusives that you come on to Pride of South London Fan TV. Amazing. I was not expecting this.
But do you know what? Now, to his credit, I mean, we'll come on to the team, like you say, later. I'm actually super impressed with his physique, his application, his attitude. I think Ollie has really got the best out of him by putting his arm around him rather than someone like Jose who just slagged him off in the media, which really battered his confidence.
What was that? There was that game, one game afterwards. He just Jose said he was just telling Shaw what to do on the touchline.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good man management.
The big catalyst for you has obviously been the return of Bruno Fernandes. Not the return of Bruno Fernandes, the return of Pogba, but then obviously the signing of Bruno Fernandes. Under Ollie, for me, he it's your biggest chance of bottling up what Ferguson had, and he definitely had brought back the counter-attacking style. But what was obvious was you didn't have a player to sort of initiate or create the passing style of a Scholes, for example, used to have. Now, Fernandes is that guy who is doing that. Now, Pogba, it's not rocket science. It's finally playing in his position on the left-hand side of the midfield, and you're seeing the results of that. those two, are they the difference that finally makes you look like a team that could actually possibly do more than qualify for the Champions League, which is your big aim this season?
I think that's giving Pogba a bit too much credit, actually, because in the last sort of 16 games or something that Bruno's come into and has played for us, he's contributed 15 assists or a goal in 16 games, and he has completely revolutionised the squad. He's made every single attacking player and midfielders in defence just sort of raise their game, because remember in like his second game we drew, I think it was maybe to Everton, and he came out and apparently in the dressing room he was just going psycho because he was so pissed off that we didn't win. And I think he's just been this catalytic player who's come in and his attitude, application, his ability is there to see for everyone. I think he's raised the expectations of every single player about what they should be putting in every single game, and I think that's something that is really there across the squad now, and it's part of Ollie's vision, is that he wants players playing for Manchester United who have real passion and belief and a realisation that it is one of the biggest clubs in the world, and we don't want any prima donnas. We've shipped out the prima donnas and some of the dross, which hopefully will continue with a few of the players. Coming on to them two playing together, yeah, it's starting to look really good, isn't it? They're almost passing to each other without looking because they know where the players are going to be, and that's credit to Ollie as well for able to integrate them two into the system in the roles that he's asked them to play. But it seems like it's they're both playing quite naturally. I think maybe Pogba would like to play a little bit further forward, but it's starting to look really good, isn't it? Especially with Matic being the sort of linchpin behind them.
I think, yeah, he's definitely come through as well. I mean, it's not really been talked about, is he, Matic? But he's sort of playing his role, and I think he is a class above a McTominay, for example. Like a very good midfield three. Before we move on, you touched that you've worked in a restaurant, so I want to put this question because I know that you love your wine. If you could compare Bruno Fernandes to any bottle of wine, what would he be?
Well, it'd have to be Portuguese, so I'd probably go for, when I had my own little restaurant, I listed the best wine in the world briefly, which was a 2011 Dow's vintage port. And I bought like 4 bottles, and so probably a nice vintage port from Douro.
Right, fantastic. Okay, right, moving on. There's one player we've got to ask you about from the Palace perspective. Obviously, last summer we sold you Wan-Bissaka, which was a shame for us, but I think it was a good deal for both clubs. In the end, we cleared some debt, and despite our poor recent form, we've had an okay season. It hasn't really affected us losing the fullback really, although obviously we'd be better with him. How has he done? And I think this is the one thing for me that Ollie has changed, is that he has got the recruitment much better. How for you has Wan-Bissaka settled in, and what do you think of him as a
player? Well, I think Wan-Bissaka and Bruno look bargains at 50 million, 43 mil respectively. I knew about Wan-Bissaka quite well already, to be honest, because I wasn't playing fantasy football, which is how you learn about all sorts of players last year, but it was there for everyone to see. He had the best stats in the league in a lot of defensive categories. He's young, he's English, and he was really excited about coming to United, and I think we've nurtured him really well. He's played a lot of minutes, so he's obviously got the physicality as well, and I think there wasn't very many questions about his defensive ability across various departments, tackling, positioning, heading and so forth. His timing is unbelievable. I absolutely love his timing because he puts in a lot of last minute tackles, but he just pulls them off all the time. Yes. And that's the sign of a great player. And I think if he can add to his offensive prowess a little bit more as well, which he's starting to, he could become one of the best right backs in the world. I honestly believe that.
I mean, that's what I was going to ask you about, because, I mean, the funny story about Wan-Bissaka is, and this is for any United fans watching if they don't know, is that he was actually started out as a winger. And that's ironic considering it's going forward, which is probably the weakest part of his game. And he's only really brought in as a right back because we were short of right backs for training. And so he came in for the first team just really for cover. And then the rest is obviously history. He's now got an England cap and a 40 million move.
Yeah.
I mean, it's this thing, isn't it, where everyone says if you could have Trent Alexander going forward and Wan-Bissaka defending, you'd have the ultimate right back. So, but I do think that's interesting to say, because from what I've watched of him, I do think he is improving going forward. And I do wonder if there's a way to get Trent Alexander and Wan-Bissaka in that England team somehow.
Yeah, play Trent in midfield.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are saying that, but, you know, I mean, I'm sure you'll agree on this. Let's not dwell too long on talking about Liverpool players, mate. That's Wan-Bissaka. It's good to know that he's doing well, and that this leads me on nicely to the next point discussion, because I think a lot of Palace fans feared when he went to Man United, because the last time you had one of our hot prospects, you didn't develop him very well, and we feared that you'd try and ruin another one of our players. So, Wilfried Zaha, I'm not going to spend too long on this, because if you go on my channel, it's a video on my channel, Wilfried Zaha, Man United flop, exposing the myth. So pretty much what I have to say on this issue is on that video. But I thought, having you on, Andy, as a Man United fan, I couldn't turn down the perspective. Bearing in mind, you know, now where Wilf is years on. He hasn't had the best season. I think the speculation didn't help. I know he scored the wonder goal against Chelsea last week, but bearing in mind this time last year, he was universally kind of recognised as the best player outside the top six. I'm saying this time last year, not now. And also the fact you bought him off us for £10 million, and the guy who signed him was Alex Ferguson. And then you sold him back to us over about year to year and a half later for $3 million. Fair enough, you have got the 25% sell-on clause, which is why I think we're pricing him out of moves, because it's not worth us selling him unless it's very high because of that. When you see sort of last year him being talked about as a player now between 40 to 60 million, you've got to reflect on that and think somewhere as a club where we promoted dross like Lingard, Pereira. Now, Adnan Januzaj was the guy Moyes went with at the time.
Yeah.
Whatever you think of Zaha, and I think, you know, the jury will be out whether he will could play at a top four club. I mean, obviously, I hope he plays at Palace forever, but I know some Palace fans have an itch to see him go and prove this sort of what I think is a wrong label from his time at United, where he's called a Man United flop. You've got to sort of have some sort of think somewhere the club did something wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Fergie clearly had the foresight at that time to sign him as his last signing, because it's you can't argue about how he's developed and what a quality player he's become, and if you can imagine that with better players around him than James McCarthy or whatever.
That's the thing. I think he gets. I mean, the Arsenal fans do the Pepe beat Zaha thing, and it's like, well, let's try Pepe playing in a team as defensive minded as us. So, yeah.
Well, I think he was badly affected by Ferguson's departure, as our RVP was. And then Moyes came in, and, you know, the speculation about David Moyes' daughter. I don't know if you've Googled Lauren Moyes. I certainly haven't.
I mean, on that, he did speak about that. I don't know whether you watched a recent interview he did on Rio Ferdinand's YouTube channel. And I will come on that, and I will say that he completely refuted that and denied it completely.
Fair enough.
Says that actually never even met David Moyes' daughter. But what he does say on that is that he didn't feel anyone in the club sort of came out to defend him on that, and that he was left on his own, which is kind of, for me, another reflection of, for me, he's sort of an embodiment of where you went wrong in that era for twofold. One, Ferguson was sort of, and I say on my video that I do on this, I'm sure Zaha made, and it's quite publicised, made some mistakes when he was at Man United, but Ferguson would have been the kind of guy to put his arm around on certain issues. And the other thing is, if you look at the other wingers you let go in the Moyes Van Gaal era who didn't succeed, Di Maria, Memphis Depay, you sort of went away from your philosophy of being about a club of wingers who get to the byline. And one of the things Rio Ferdinand says in his book is that the first thing Moyes did was to tell his wingers to cut in and pass, which is obviously why he liked an Adnan Januzaj and not a Wilfried Zaha.
Absolutely. It wasn't Manchester United's style of play, was it? It wasn't the football he was going to be playing under Fergie. If you can imagine Zaha in that team now, he would be absolutely unreal, wouldn't he, off the right? So I think our style of play under that manager was detrimental to his chances of success, because that's not playing to his natural abilities whatsoever. And if you think about the 10 million that we paid for him, so I didn't realise it was that little.
Yeah.
But in the end, he made 4 appearances, and then he came back to you guys. I think it's a real shame, actually, because like AWB and Bruno that we were talking about, he's got those mental characteristics of application and commitment and a love of the game that you want in your team. And I think we broke him a little bit, didn't we? Or Moyes did.
Yeah, I mean, I
should have given him.
I mean, the most telling thing was when he went on. He was at you, and he went on loan to Cardiff, and Palace played Cardiff away, and the Palace fans just thought he was a shadow of his former self. He wasn't trying to do his tricks, and then since he sort of said Moyes actually told him to stop doing his tricks, it's like, well, as I said on the video, why would you tell Zaha to stop doing the things that made Alex Ferguson buy him? So yeah, I mean, we'll park it there. It's an interesting one, like you said. We'll never know, and I think unless he does get that move, and obviously, like I said, I hope he does stay at Palace for the rest of his career. But there is a part of every Palace fan would like him to sort of play at Champions League level and see how he get on, and that question remains unanswered. I'm not sitting here saying he'd definitely succeed. I think he would. Maybe I am slightly biased, but I think it would be.
I agree.
I think it would be a shame if his career big part of me obviously wants him to stay, but another part of me thinks it'd be a shame if he ended his career with that question unanswered, if he could make it at a sort of Champions League level. Anyway, listen.
Well, I'd definitely take him at United, especially if we get 25% off.
Right, okay. We'll move on from that one. Right, let's get into the teams, Andy. Let's get into the game. I'm going to start with my Palace team. Like we alluded to at the start of the video, there isn't a lot of options at all. It's like looking on the supermarket shelf and pretty much nothing is available. It's pretty much at the start of lockdown. That's how I compare it. Obviously, we go with Vincente Guaita in goal. Joel Ward can stay at right back. I know there's talk about Tyrick Mitchell coming in for his debut at left back, but for me, this is not the game. The game to give him his debut was against Aston Villa. Why he wasn't given his debut against Aston Villa, I don't know. Maybe he didn't get that bottle of wine Roy's been asking for, but I wouldn't throw him in on the left-hand side against Greenwood in the form that he's on. Not a debut you want. So I'm going to stick with PVA. Sakho and Dan, well, with Cahill's injury, that has to be the central defence partnership. The one big change I'm having is I'm dropping Luca. His form's been really, really poor. And I don't know what he's got to do to be dropped. I don't expect him to be dropped by Roy because he seems undroppable for some reason, despite the fact his passing has been very, very poor in the last few games. I would start with Jairo Riddleworld in his place. I would keep Kiate in there to match the physicality of Pogba, and obviously James McArthur is normally one of the first names on the team sheet. 3 defensive midfielders. I know I've been complaining about that, but that's for a fixture against Aston Villa. United are in good form, and I think this is actually one of those games where Roy's midfield lineup could work. Front 3, again, lack of options with Benteke's suspension. Is Benteke suspended a good thing? I don't know anymore. Sometimes I think Benteke's playing well, but ultimately he's still sort of lacking. I know he got the goal the other week, and very unprofessional of him to get suspended. He actually got sent off, Andy, after the final whistle.
Yeah, saw it.
Probably his biggest achievement in the last 3 years to do that. And then so obviously Jordan Ayew up top, Andros Townsend on the right. I'd put Zaha to the left because you don't want Zaha up against Wan-Bissaka, who would obviously probably be the best man to give him a man-marking job. And I think I was saying, actually, one thing I've been saying, Andy, is ironically, it's against the sort of bigger teams. Like, so you saw the goal against Chelsea that Wilf played better now because the likes of Man United and Chelsea trust themselves to sort of win the game with their ability going forward. They don't put 2 or 3 players on Wilf and systematically foul him like a lesser team would. So he actually, ironically, finds more freedom against the likes of you. So we'll see. Hopefully he'll have one of his better games. Maybe I'm naive, but even looking at that team, I still think we've got a slight chance. But we'll come on to predictions later, but I'm still not too optimistic. But I think that's the team that will give us the best chance. Andy, I know there's some injury issues at left back. We talked earlier about the young Gary Barlow, Luke Shaw. Will he be fit? Let's get the United lineup.
Not sure on Shaw. And Brandon Williams got a head injury late in the game, who's his natural replacement. And obviously Ashley Young's gone elsewhere now. In goal, I've got David De Gea. I won't go through every player and what I think of them, but I think he's had his best days for United and needs to go, and we'll take Dean Henderson back, please. So De Gea in goal, Wan-Bissaka at right back, Lindelof and Maguire in the middle. I think Tuanzebe's knocking on the door of Lindelof, probably get someone else at centre back in the window.
Yeah.
Shaw or Williams, hopefully at left back. If not, I don't know who's going to play there.
Come in there, Andy. Sorry to interrupt, but I will come in there. It is your centre backs where I've looked at and thought we could get some joy, particularly Lindelof.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, Obafemi obviously exploited a bit of weakness in the set piece very late last night. I'm sticking with Ollie's front six of Pogba and Matic, and then Bruno ahead of them, Mason on the right, Martial up top, and Rashford on the left.
Yeah, I think obviously your forward line picks itself and doesn't change. The only thing we have played a lot of games in a row. Do you think at some point maybe the FA Cup semi-final is going to have to rest one or two?
Yeah, possibly. It was interesting actually. Jesse Lingard wasn't even in the squad last night, which was nice to see. I think
what's
maybe we will rest him.
I mean, he is a player who haunts Crystal Palace fans because of his goal in the FA Cup final. But what happened to him? I
just doing the Pardew dance.
I never really rated him that highly, but it seems like he's just gone from being quite average to that. Like, what's going on?
No, I think his best displays have been for England. Bizarrely, he's not good enough. He's not good enough. He needs to go to someone like Everton or someone like that.
Fair enough. Okay, well, I mean, let's move on to the predictions. Now, I actually posted on social media that Leicester fans not to worry that Crystal Palace will beat Man United. But I did put a laughing emoji, so I just thought they'd know I was joking. But I feel like some of them thought I was serious by some of the comments, and I feel like I've promised someone that the Tooth Fairy is real, because I really don't think we're going to get results based on our recent performances. I mean, I'm going to go. I just think your forward line's too strong at the moment. Our fullbacks were they're quite poor the other day, positionally wise. You never quite know what Sacco is going to turn up, and I just think the way Greenwood is. Man United wise, like, I'm not going to lie, it doesn't excite me. But England wise, Greenwood's really exciting me. I mean, one of his finishes the other game was just so lethal. I just think that you will have too much power and finesse. And with the Bruno factor now, I just think you have too much. I'm going to go 3-1 Man U, but you never rule Palace out. We did beat you at Old Trafford earlier in the year. So we did get the 3 points there. And then obviously in recent years as well, we've had a good record. We beat them away and got a draw this year against Manchester's best team, Man City. So and obviously we can beat teams higher than Man United in the table, like Man City, and bigger clubs like Man City. Then can't we do it against United? Yeah. But I'm going 3-1 Man U.
For me, not at the moment. I think losing Benteke, is a critical blow for your chances. 6 in 65 games or whatever it is. I've gone for 3-0 to Manchester United. We've kept clean sheets in 11 of the last 17 games. And unless Zaha or Ayew or Townsend produces a bit of a worldie, or maybe we could have a little bit of a defensive lapse in some way, which is not quite solid enough yet, or De Gea flaps at it from across. I think I would hope to keep a clean sheet, to be honest. And the attacking options are there for everyone to see.
So I think your score prediction?
3-0.
Okay, so I'm going 3-1 Man United. Andy's going 3-0 Man United. What are your predictions? Do you disagree? Please put your comments in the comments below. And if you've disagreed with anything else today on team lineups, what are your thoughts on Roy? Is it time to go? As I said earlier, 81.3% of you saying that it is time for him to go. And also, if he does go, who would you get in to replace him? As always, if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please subscribe. As I alluded to earlier, the Wilfried Zaha video is on the channel. I will see you after the game, hopefully this time with at least a more positive performance. See you next time. Thank you.